Sean Myrie. Please like, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff. This episode tonight is a Black History special because it's February and it's Black History Month, right? So we're going to get down to earth about, some may say, a controversial figure. To some, he's a hero. To the government, he was like an enemy of the state. Yeah, he has a story. The one Malcolm X, right? Malcolm X, born Malcolm Little, later el-Hajj, Malik el-Shabazz, May 19th, 1925, February 21st, 1965, was an African American revolutionary and human rights activist who founded the Muslim Mosque Incorporated, MMI, and the Organization of Afro-American Unity. He was also a prominent figure during the civil rights movement until his assassination in 1965. A spokesperson, a spokesman, and a minister for the Nation of Islam, NOI, from 1952 to 1964 before his death, right? After which he left the Nation of Islam, and he was a vocal advocate for the Black empowerment and the promotion of Islam within the African American community. A controversial figure accused of preaching violence, but Malcolm is also a celebrated figure with the Blacks and the Muslims worldwide for his pursuit of racial justice. That is a little bit of detail who Malcolm X is, but there's more to the man, right? Malcolm spent his adolescence living in a series of foster homes with various relatives after his father's death. In the movie, Malcolm X movie, they're saying that his father was like, killed by the Ku Klux Klan, right? But that's the movie. His father's death and his mother's hospitalization. He he committed various crimes. So they're saying when he was young, he'd done a lot of crimes. Being sentenced to 8 to 10 years in prison from 1946 for larceny and burglary, and in prison, right? So he was in prison for that for at least 10 years almost or so. He joined the Nation of Islam, adopting the name Malcolm X to symbolize his unknown African ancestral surname while discarding the white slave master's name Little, because it was Malcolm Little, right? And after his parole in 1952, he quickly became one of the organization's most influential leaders. He became very influential, right? He was he was the public face of the organization for 12 years. So a long time he was the face for the NOI, Nation of Islam. 12 years advocating black empowerment and the separation of black and white Americans, as well as criticizing Martin Luther King, which he was around the same time. They're around Martin Luther King Jr. and the mainstream civil rights movements for its emphasis on nonviolence and racial integration. Malcolm X also expressed pride in some of the nation's social welfare achievements, such as its free drug rehabilitation program from the 1950s onward. Malcolm X was subjected to surveillance, I'm not surprised, by the FBI investigations. Not surprised. Malcolm X was a controversial figure, right? In the 50s to 65 when he was assassinated. Uh, he went through a lot, and it's connected to today, right? With the freedom of speech. A lot of things, what's going on now, because before social media, there was people like this, very influential. When in the streets, media captured his speeches, and people listened. And he was very controversial to the government because it says ever since, he started being in this organization and becoming the face of it, the FBI been watching him. In the 1960s, Malcolm X began to grow delusional with the Nation of Islam as well as his leader, Elijah Muhammad. Yeah, he was feeling a little bit different because people were hating on him in a way, right? In the 1960s, Malcolm X began to grow delusional with the Nation of Islam as well as with the leader, Elijah Muhammad, right? He embraced Sunni Islam and the civil rights movement after completing the Hajj to Mecca. So when he went to Mecca, right, he embraced being a Muslim, Martin. When he went to Mecca, everything changed a little bit more, right? Sunni Muslim, right? Civil rights movement. After completing the Hajj in Mecca, he became known as el-Hajj Malik Shabazz, which roughly translate to the pilgrim, Malcolm the Patriarch. After a brief period of travel across Africa, he publicly renounced the Nation of Islam. So after he went to Africa, he kind of said, yo, I'm finished with the Nation of Islam. This is Black History Month, so I'm giving you some knowledge, right? So, yeah, he said he was finished with the Nation of Islam and founded the Islamic MMI, right? The Pan African Organization of African American Unity. Throughout 1964, that's after, right? That's a year before he got assassinated, right? That's when he left the Nation of Islam right before he died. So 1964, the conflict with the Nation of Islam intensified as he was sent death threats. Oh, on January 24th, 1965, he was assassinated in New York City. Right, three nation members, as they're saying, nation members were charged with murder and given indeterminate life sentences. In 2021, two of the convictions were vacated. So two of them, they released them because they know something was fishy. Why did they release them after so much years? The government. You're going to hear that later on. Vacated. Speculations about the assassination and whether it was conceived or aided by leading or additional members of the Nation of Islam or with law enforcement agencies has persisted for decades. So everybody's blaming each other. We heard about they called the nation in this. They accused the nation of killing Malcom X. But now it's coming that it really is like, the law enforcement, FBI, CIA, all that shit. It's coming out. Last year, Malcolm X family, they put out a lawsuit for $100 million against the FBI, the NYPD, and the CIA because of evidence not, put forth at that time and now, right? He was Okay, so decades he was honored with the Malcolm X Day, on which he was com- commemorated in various cities across the United States. Yeah, hundreds of streets and schools in the U.S. have been renamed in his name, in his honor. That's true. A lot of places in America, you see Malcolm X everywhere. Malcolm X Boulevard, Malcolm X everything, right? So streets and schools in the U.S. have been renamed in his honor. While at Audubon Ballroom, the site of his assassination was partly redeveloped in 2005 to accommodate the Malcolm X and Dr. Betty Shabazz Memorial and Educational Center. His autobiography, on which he collaborated with Alex Haley, was published in 1965. I've read that. I don't know if people have read that, but it's some knowledge, right? Because everybody wants the aggressive shit about Trump. Imagine if Trump was around in these times. Imagine if he was around in these times. What would he do? Malcolm was facing a lot of stuff back then. He got assassinated. But there's more than just one type of Trump back then he was fighting. Malcolm Little was born May 19th, 1925, in Omaha, Nebraska, the fourth of seven children of Grenadian-born Louis Little, right? So his father was from Grenada, right? He was from the islands, not even America. And Georgia-born Earl Little, right? So I'm not going to read all through this because I know about Malcolm X, a good amount about Malcolm X. He was a controversial figure, right? He was locked up for about 10 years in prison for like larceny and a burglary. And after that, he was kind of molded. He was molded into this, I hate to say character, but he was molded into being a Muslim in prison. Soon as he came out of prison, he had a job. Soon as he came out of prison, he met with Elijah Muhammad. And then he became a great speaker for the Nation of Islam, opening up all types of temples, all types of places. He was like the showman for the Nation of Islam. So he brought a lot of attention. It made whatever if you want to call it, congregation grow. It made them more popular, more attractive. And he was really educated. Remember, he was locked up in prison for almost 10 years or so, about that. So that whole time he went towards, not at the beginning, but he went towards becoming a Muslim, right? And he went into the Nation of Islam. And since he started to do that, going around and if you want to say preaching, they don't call it preaching, but talking to people with lectures about the Nation of Islam and having hundreds of thousands of people listen to him or Elijah Muhammad, that brought attention, right? The FBI, the government start watching this man saying, yo, this man is like too powerful. They put it in the Malcolm X movie too. What's his name again? Who produced that movie again, the Malcolm X movie, Spike Lee. They put it in that movie, basically a lot of things about what was going on, not everything, right? They put about Malcolm X in that movie, but they put how he was a criminal first, right? That's how they paint him. He was a criminal on the streets, and after then he got arrested, served time, turned a Muslim, came out, start talking to a lot of people on the streets, the ideology of the Muslims, that the black man is God, and like, to make the black people, especially males, feel proud of themselves, and black people feel proud of themselves. So their ideology was the black man was God, the white man is the devil, and stuff like that. So that was like a popular thing to attract people those times, because these guys are wearing suits, they look educated, you get what I mean? Like, they just looked attracted to somebody in the street who wasn't doing that good. So he came out of prison like this. And when he came out of prison and he was helped build up the nation, down the line, jealousy came. People didn't like, some people may not like Malcolm, because Malcolm came out of prison and he became kind of powerful within their eyes. So like from 1952 to 1965. 1965, he was assassinated, right? He was killed, but he was getting threats before. Remember, he broke off. Right after he broke off, all of this happened, start getting the threats, and then he died. But before, when he was with the nation, it wasn't that bad. It wasn't that bad, right? He had more support, I guess. But when he went and done the Hajj, when he went to Mecca, he came back with a different ideology. He didn't believe the same ideology he had from the Nation of Islam. That's what probably was a threat, because he started preaching that everybody should be brothers and sisters, white, black, no matter what. Because when he went to Africa, to Hajj, he saw white Muslims, he saw different types of Muslims. So that changed his way, how he thought. He even said that in public. A lot of people don't know that. So the main thing about this is, just last year, if you know about Malcolm X's story, just last year, his family came out with a lawsuit accusing the government of basically being involved, which everybody, conspiracy theorists, been saying for ages, and they were looked on as crazy, saying that basically the government, the CIA, and they kind of admit it. It's like they're admitting it. They were part of him being in that situation. Two of the people they released, one guy admitted it. There's one who admit that he killed this guy named Hangley or something. He admitted it. Yeah, he admitted it, that he killed Malcolm X. See, this is a big story. This is a conspiracy, 100%. When you want to talk about conspiracy, the Malcolm X thing, all the way up until recent days, is conspiracy. I could show you guys some stuff, even now to his nephew. His nephew was assassinated, like I think 2013 in Mexico, right? In Mexico. This is his nephew, right? This is his nephew. I mean, not his nephew, his grandson. Let me correct myself. This is his grandson. This is his grandson was killed in Mexico years ago, right? He's the individual they said set the fire to his think what? If this is his grandson, his daughter's apartment, right? And she died. So wait, let me see. The grandson of civil rights activist. Yeah, Betty Shabazz. It's Betty, my mistake. Yeah, their daughter. Yeah. So this guy died. He got killed in Mexico. He was trying to do something too, right? This is Malcolm X's grandson. It's his grandson. I made a mistake, not no nephew. It's his grandson. His grandson. 2013, murdered in Mexico. A lot of people don't talk about this, but you see, so Malcolm X was watched from the beginning because his father was a Garveyite too. Malcolm X's father was a Garveyite. He was a Garveyite who, if you know who Marcus Garvey is, he's for like black upliftment, black power, if you want to say, all about, bringing black people together. That's before Martin Luther King and Malcolm X, right? So his father was a Garveyite, and probably that's why he's been a target from a long time ago. The government was watching Marcus Garvey. So Marcus Garvey, right, was deported back to Jamaica, and after then he went to England, and nobody knows after that. So Malcolm X's father was influenced by Marcus Garvey, which um, was called that I've said Malcolm X's father was influenced by Marcus Garvey, and Malcolm X is influenced from Marcus Garvey. It's all together. But right now, this shows you there's so much information about Malcolm X. This is a Black History special. There's so much stuff what he has done, right? He said he doesn't have any written material, but he has recorded material, where people, they just retranslated it into books and stuff like that. He was, like I said, he became an orphan after his parents died, and he was just going around to different places, some family members, and after then, with strangers too. So I think his parents were 7 Day Adventists too. They're 7 Day Adventists. That's not the important thing. The main thing is that the government was they were watching him from the beginning when he came out of prison, 1952. From 1952 for all the way up until 65, they were watching him because the whole time when he was in prison, locked up from 1946, he was getting groomed. But like it or not, he was in prison and he became a Muslim, right? So around those times, the 40s, what was going on in America in Harlem was big. Was the Harlem Renaissance? Whatever was going on, the Renaissance was huge. What was going on in Harlem, and Malcolm X was a big part of that. Very big, so much that they influenced Muhammad Ali to become a Muslim. Muhammad Ali became a Muslim, and they thought that this movement, what like X was part of, was like communist. They were talking like they didn't understand this, right? They thought that he was like a communist. They accused him of being a communist. He talked to many leaders all around the world. Controversial Fidel Castro, I think, he talked to him. He was going on he went on a travel. He went around. He went to Egypt, right? Many other places. I could look it up, but he's a controversial figure in America, right? Very controversial. And he got assassinated. So that's to show you how scared America and threatened by this man. He was born in Nebraska, of all places, Omaha, Nebraska, February 21st. It's Black History Month, people. It's February. February 21st is coming up, right? That's when he died. He died February 21st, 1965. Born May 19th, 1925 in Omaha, Nebraska. It's bad, man, how this went down. Everything is coming out now. Everything is coming out. Even Donald Trump was part of this. Like, he's saying he's going to open up files. When he said he was going to open up files, he said about Martin Luther King. I swear he said something about Malcolm X. But when he would start saying about he has all these files too, like the Epstein files. Sorry to bring up the Epstein files, but he said he had files about Martin Luther King, what never been released, classified. This is when it came up. About a year ago, the family of Malcolm X, they put out $100 million lawsuit against the U.S. government, basically the FBI, the CIA, and the NYPD, because they're saying when this event happened to Malcolm X, the law enforcement didn't really do anything. They didn't even like apprehend the suspects. It was like a weird situation. And if you see the video, you can watch the video too. This is not just hearsay. And for years, I used to watch the video and I was wondering how come it doesn't look like only the people from the church, the in the building were in a panic. You didn't see the cops rushing to kind of like do anything. If you watch the video, just watch the video, all you people. It's kind of strange now when you watch it. They're right. The family's right. They're saying they kind of they didn't care. Like they showed that they didn't want to even be a part of it. So the FBI, the CIA, and the NYPD, $100 million they're gonna sue them for, because back in the days they were trying to blame the Nation of Islam. For a long time, it was the Nation of Islam. They're saying that two or three individuals were a part of this whole thing. Two of the guys they're out of prison now. They're not even in prison, but they served time for the assassination of Malcolm X. But only one guy, he said he done it, right? I could look up the name. I think his name is Aziz. 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 Malcolm X is a big figure, people. If you don't know, you should look him up. He had a long resume in dealing with a lot of things. He believes any means necessary, any means necessary. So, throughout 1964, as his conflict with the Nation of Islam intensified, Malcolm X was repeatedly threatened. In February, a leader of the number 7 ordered a bombing of Malcolm X's car. I never even heard of that. That's new news. See? Because of social media, you can find out. Is this a alleged thing? Because think of it. That's why the government said that the nation was behind it. Okay. In February, a leader of the Temple Number 7 ordered a bombing on Malcolm X's car. March. Muhammad told Boston minister Louis X, later known as Louis Farrakhan, that hypocrites like Malcolm should have their heads cut off. I didn't even know that. You hear those words? Holy shit. And this is the guy who was like, under Malcolm X. This is Louis Farrakhan, they're saying, was talking like this. This is in his young days. He says a hypocrite like Malcolm should have his head cut off. April 10th. Damn. Muhammad Speaks featured a cartoon depicting Malcolm X bouncing severed head. I didn't even know that shit. That's some news, man. See, it's crazy. It's good to read stuff because, they have this in books, but people use the net so you could find out some good information because I had no idea this was like around. On June 8th, FBI surveillance recorded a telephone call in which Betty Shabazz was told that her husband was as good as dead. 4 days later, the FBI informant received a tip that Malcolm is going to be bumped off. The same month, the nation sued to reclaim Malcolm X's residence in East Elmhurst. That's why they could pin it on them, because there's all this stuff going back and forth. They were trying to take the house the residence where he was, because it was owned by the nation. East Elmhurst, Queens, New York. His family was ordered to vacate. But on February 14th, 1965, the night before the hearing on the postponing the eviction, the house was destroyed by fire. Man, so yeah, all this stuff happened. So it made a good story to blame it on the nation. You saw how deadly they are back then, and there wasn't no social media, it was news. Now, when you hear this, anybody with sense nowadays is going to say, wait a minute, shit, this guy was really set up. And they made it look like it was the nation. It was perfect for them to do that back then. Black on black crime, right? On July 9th, Muhammad aided John Ali, suspected of being the undercover FBI agent, referred to Malcolm as saying, anyone who opposes the Honorable Elijah Muhammad put their lives in jeopardy. In December 4th issue, Muhammad Speaks. Louis X wrote that such a man is Malcolm, worthy of death. So all of this talk, where did he get this from? They recorded all this shit? That's why, the FBI and what's going on now, like in America, it's crazy, man, because this is real. This is not like a movie. This is real shit. What they're saying was recorded. Like they're accusing even the head of the nation, who's the head right now, Louis Farrakhan, of talking like that, he probably will say, no, I wasn't talking like that. Saying, yo, Malcolm is a hypocrite and he should have people like that should have their heads cut off. And then that's how the FBI and American government pinned it on the nation, or tried to pin it on the nation. Damn. Check this. On February 19th, and it's February right now, Black History Month. On February 19th, 1965, Malcolm told interviewer Gordon Parks that the Nation of Islam was actively trying to kill him. So he went on media and he talked. Malcolm actually said this. Yo, like, I know Malcolm had many interviews, but I didn't know this. Gordon Parks at the Nation of Islam was trying to kill him. On February 21st, 1965, he was preparing to address the OAAU in Manhattan's Audubon Ballroom when someone in the 400-person audience yelled, "Nigga, get your hand out of my pocket. These people are dead. What are we doing?" No, it's still going on. It's like the Epstein files. Epstein's dead and they're talking about it. His family just last year around this time, they put out $100 million lawsuit against the FBI, the same FBI what's doing stuff with the ICE, the CIA, and basically said that they're the ones responsible for the death. So this is to show you how they'll cover up shit and make themselves look like they're so legit, but the government are crooks and gangsters. And then, like, a lot of people know that, but this is just evidence, right? He was killed by the government. That's what the family's accusing. Killed by the government. Two people came out of prison from his situation. They vacated them. Only one guy admitted it, right? So this is all tied with your freedom, because it was civil rights time back then. Back then, people were fighting to be, free. He was one of the big figures, and now your civil rights in America are like tested right now. That's what's the big news in America. As Malcolm and his bodyguards tried to quell the disturbance, a man rushed forward and shot him once in the chest with a sawed-off shotgun, and two other men charged the stage firing semi-automatic handguns. Malcolm X was pronounced dead at 3:30 p.m. shortly after arriving at Columbia Presbyterian Hospital. The autopsy identified the 21 gunshots. Damn, they had to get rid 21 gunshots to the chest. That's overkill, yo. 21 to the chest, shoulder, arms, and legs, including 10 back shot wounds. It's like they wanted to make sure that he didn't even survive or anything. And they put that on the nation. See, it says one gunman, Nation of Islam member, Talamaj Hayer. So they're putting this on them from a long time. Talamaj Hayer, also known as Thompson Hagen, was beaten by the crowd before police arrived. So the police arrived late. The crowd had to grab him and beat the guy. Witness identified the other gunman as Nation members Norman 3X Butler and Thomas 15X Johnson. All three were convicted of murder in March 1966, sentenced to life in prison, right? And remember, I told you two came out. Two of them came out. Just one guy, the first guy, Hagler or whatever, he stayed in. So after trial, Hayer confessed. Hayer confessed, but refused to identify the other assailants except to assert that they were not Butler and Johnson. I heard that. The man said it's not the two guys who they locked up. It wasn't them. The two guys who they locked up with him. He said it wasn't them. It was someone else. Of course. Of course. Now you see it coming out with the FBI, the families suing the FBI and the CIA. Of course. So in 1977 and 78, he signed affidavits reasserting Butler and Johnson's innocence, naming four other nation members of Newark's mosque, number 25, as participants in the murder or its planning. These affidavits did not result in the case being reopened. You see that corrupt shit? Let me read that again. Damn. So he reasserts Butler and Johnson's innocence, naming four others. So he says they're innocent. He keeps pleading to them. Those two guys are innocent. And he names four other people. But that they didn't want to even know about that shit. That's why the family is suing. Malcolm X family is suing, right? Butler, today known as Muhammad Abdul Aziz, was paroled in 1984 and became the head of the nation's Harlem Mosque in 1998. So the guy who they accuse of murdering or unaliving Malcolm X came out and he continued. And even if whatever is controversial, he opened his own mosque. This guy, his own mosque in 1998. He maintained his innocence in prison. Johnson, who changed his name Khalid Islam, rejected the nation's teachings and converted to Sunni Islam. Released in 1987, he maintained his innocence until his death in August 2009. Hare, who also rejected the nation's teachings while in prison and converted to Sunni Islam, known today as Majid Halim, he was paroled in 2010. So this is why the family is going after the government. Like, it's very mixed up. You see these stories? That's why I'm doing it. It's Black History Month. I gotta dig this up. You see, it doesn't sound right. So as the future goes on and other things happen, you have to question this shit. You have to question it because it's affecting today, right? In 2021, Muhammad Abdul Aziz and Khalid Islam, formerly Norman 3X Butler and Thompson 15X Johnson, were exonerated from their murder convictions following a review that they found the FBI and the New York Police Department withheld key evidence during the trial. Right on July 14th, 2022, Aziz filed a suit in the U.S. District Court in Brooklyn against the city of New York, seeking $40 million in damages related to his wrongful imprisonment. So you hear all of these guys? Basically, it's like they're all innocent. So who killed Malcolm X? That's why the family is doing what they're doing. Because if I read this over, I swear all of these guys, like, they served time, but they came out and they took off the charges off of two of them. Right? So this is crazy, man. That's why it's still open. This is Black history. This is a mystery for Malcolm X. And I told you earlier, his grandson, right, died, right? He died in Mexico. And I think he started a fire, right? It's Betty Shabazz grandson, I think in his mother's apartment. And she died, I think, right? These people are, okay, yep, bless up. Yeah, she died. So I'm giving you guys some knowledge because, like I said, it's Black History Month, and right now, symbolically, in Black History Month, people are fighting civil rights in America to be free. That's part of Black History Month. People are fighting for their freedom in the 60s. Black people didn't get their full freedom. No one's free still, but until like a certain, you should say maybe till the 70s and stuff like that. But Malcolm X was a big figure, controversial. He believed that you should defend yourself, right? Black people have the right to, or anybody have the right to defend themselves. What happened is when he started to change his ideology, this what made him a target because he tried to change it from the nation to including other nations, if you want to call it like that. He didn't believe the same teachings that he'd been getting since he was in prison, right? So, and then he accused Elijah Muhammad, or things were coming up about Elijah Muhammad. He was saying certain types of things. Accusations was with Elijah Muhammad having all these children, and he had a whole bunch of children, and how they're saying he's been with, like, there was a conspiracy with the underage and stuff. So Malcolm was talking about those types of stuff, and that made him really, a target, from the nation. If you're talking about their leader like that, or any type of shit. So now, allegations of conspiracy, the conspiracies, right, in the Malcolm X story. Within days of question of who bore responsibility for the assassination was being publicly debated. On February 23rd, James Farmer, leader of the Congress of Racial Equality, announced at the news conference that local drug dealers and not the Nation of Islam were to blame. Others accused the NYPD, the FBI, and the CIA, citing the lack of police protection. I remember that. The ease in which these assassins entered the Audubon Ballroom, and failure of the police to preserve the crime scene. I remember that. Earl Grant, one of Malcolm's associates who was presented at the assassination, later was present at the assassination, wrote, right? 5 minutes later, most incredible scene took place into the halls. Sauntered about a dozen policemen. They were strolling at about the pace one would expect of them if they were patrolling a quiet park. So they didn't even want to be part of this shit, right? The law enforcement didn't want to be part of this. I could hardly believe my eyes. Here, the New York City policemen entering a room from which at least a dozen shots had been heard, and yet not one of them had their guns out. Holy shit. Now you have to look on it because now we got social media. People should have really looked on that. Maybe that's why it's such a conspiracy. It's true. If all these gunshots was going off, Malcolm got like 20 something shots in his chest and some in his back, and the police wasn't running in that place with guns blazing and stuff, that shows you something, right? That's real bad. That's real bad, right? So it says concern about it. So in 1970, the public learned about con, uh, they learned about other secret FBI programs established to infiltrate and disrupt civil rights organization, COINTELPRO. That's what it is. You heard about COINTELPRO. So in the 1970s, the public learned about COINTELPRO and other secret FBI programs established to infiltrate and disrupt civil rights. What are they doing right now, probably, with the ICE? What are they doing right now in America? They're doing it in a different way. But this is what they're doing. Civil rights during the 50s and the 60s. Louis Lamarx wrote that John Ali, National Secretary of the Nation of Islam, was a former FBI agent. I didn't know that shit. Holy shit. Let me read this again. I don't know if the nation will refute this and not like this, but Louis Lamarx wrote that John Ali, National Secretary of the Nation of Islam, was a former FBI agent. Malcolm X had confided to a reporter that Ali ex- exacerbated tensions between him and Elijah Muhammad, that he considered Ali his arch enemy within the Nation of Islam leadership. Ali had a meeting. I see what's been going on with Talmig Hare, one of the men convicted of killing Malcolm X the night before the assassination. So this is a other guy who I guess he wanted power in the nation too. But he's a former FBI. That's kind of fishy. It seems that they've been infiltrating, like they said, COINTELPRO, a lot of people for years. We know that this is what they do, but he was a secretary in the Nation of Islam, and he basically was an arch enemy of Malcolm X. This guy's not highlighted. He's not highlighted really. You hear about Farrakhan, but this guy's not highlighted, right? Considered Ali his arch enemy, so X considered him his arch enemy of Nation of Islam leadership. Ali had a meet. Okay, so that explains it. There's a lot of things. This is a big conspiracy. There's so much characters. This guy worked for the FBI. That's why they're suing the FBI. They're suing the FBI because somebody who worked for the Nation of Islam was also the FBI too. You see, certain things the public, they don't know unless you do your research about what was really going on. And after now you have, what's his name? Louis Farrakhan is the head of the Nation of Islam. People respect him a lot. They do respect him. They watch him with his lectures and his speeches and stuff. Even when I was little, my pops brought me to a speech of Louis Farrakhan. The Shabazz family are among those who have accused Louis Farrakhan in the involvement in Malcolm X assassination. In 1993 speech, Farrakhan seemed to acknowledge the possibility that the Nation of Islam was responsible. I don't know about that. I don't know if he really acknowledged that the Nation of Islam was partly responsible. But there's a lot of stuff about Malcolm X. There's a lot of books. People. He even visited universities and stuff like that. It's really he went around traveling. He was too powerful at his age. Remember, he died, well, they assassinated in 1965. And after 1965, that's when the revolution in America, if we want to call it, that's around when Vietnam was still going on. And then the Black Power movement actually got bigger. The Black Panthers, right, were born out of all of that. So now you see Black Panthers probably start getting big 66. It's like how we're in 2026, right? 1966, that's when a lot of groups started to form. Black Panthers, a lot of revolutionary groups, America getting angry at their government, right? Very angry at their government. They're still in war. He gets assassinated. Then, Martin Luther King, he gets assassinated. I think Kennedy's brother, he gets assassinated. Look how much people got assassinated in a short period of time. Four characters, four individuals: JFK, Malcolm X, Martin Luther King. I think it's Bobby Kennedy, his brother, got killed. So Malcolm X is somebody for Black History Month to look up if you don't know who Malcolm X is. Now, even Obama got inspiration off of Malcolm X because Malcolm X was everywhere. Like I said, I think he had a temple or a lot of influence in Chicago, big influence in Chicago. He was a threat to a lot of people, even Martin Luther King. Martin Luther King thought he was too, too, you know, different, vulgar, if you want to call it like that. After leaving the Nation of Islam, Malcolm X founded the Muslim Mosque. This is where it started. The Muslim Mosque, a religious organization and an organization of African American unity, a secular group that advocated Pan Africanism. They didn't like that shit back then. He's promoting Pan Africanism. On March 26, 1964, he briefly met with Martin Luther King Jr. for the first and only time, and only long enough to photograph to be a photograph to be taken in Washington D.C. as both men attended a Senate debate on the Civil Rights Bill at the U.S. Capitol building. So there was a Senate debate. I wonder if they have that recorded. They must have that recorded. No one really talks about it. In April, Malcolm X gave a speech titled "The Ballot of the Bullet," right? The Ballot of the Bullet, in which he advised African Americans to exercise their rights to vote wisely, but cautioned that if the government continues to prevent African Americans from attaining full equality, it might be necessary for them to take up arms. So that's what he believed, to take up arms. If you're not getting your rights, take up arms. And that was in the 60s. It's now 100 years ago. That was in the 60s. Take up arms. In the weeks after he left the Nation of Islam, several Sunni Muslims encouraged Malcolm X to learn about their faith. He soon converted to the Sunni faith, right? And then he went to the pilgrimage to Mecca in April 1964 with financial help from his half sister Ella Little Collins. Malcolm X flew to Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, as to start his Hajj pilgrimage to Mecca, right? And then it's very important for every Muslim who's able to do so. He he was delayed in Jeddah when his U.S. citizenship inability to speak Arabic caused his status as a Muslim to be questioned. So they were questioning him because his U.S. citizenship and his he can't speak Arabic when he got that he went to Jeddah, right, to Mecca for the Hajj. He had received Abdul Rahim Hazan. Well, I can't even read this man's whole name, but I'm gonna read it. Try to read it. Rahman Hazan Azam's book, The Eternal Message of Muhammad, with his visa approval, and he contacted the author, Azam's son, and arranged for his release and lent him his personal hotel suite. The next morning, Malcolm X learned the Prince Faisal had designated him as a state guest. So he was getting treated good. When he was traveling around the world, and when he went to Mecca, he was getting treated like if you want to call it a celebrity, like a king. Malcolm X had an audience with the prince. Malcolm X later said that seeing Muslims of all colors, from blue-eyed blonde to black-skinned Africans, interacting as equals led him to see Islam as the means by which racial problems could be overcome. So, yes, Malcolm started to, influence a lot of African Americans to become Muslims. That did happen. There's a big movement in the 60s, all through the 70s, going out till now. A lot of African Americans who were Christians probably too before, they converted to becoming Muslims in America. He visited Cairo, he visited France, the United Kingdom. He made a visit all over the world. He was becoming too dangerous, right? And then you see something coming up when he went to Cuba. The CIA didn't like that. The CIA didn't like that he was going to Cuba, meeting up with Castro, going to Africa, the Congo. He was traveling everywhere. That was a threat to America, especially somebody like Trump nowadays. Imagine there's Nixon and shit like that, but Trump wouldn't like a guy like this. There's nobody like this anymore. That's why that's why in the 60s was an example. If you talk too much and you're out there, they will eliminate you, right? They will eliminate you. But social media, exposes a lot of things, but they still could get you. They got Malcolm X, right? Malcolm X built up some organizations in America for black people, right? Especially if you're a Muslim American. But let's read this. On June 8th, FBI surveillance recorded a telephone call in which Betty Shabazz was told that okay, I read that already. Yeah, so the FBI has recordings. The family and the FBI been communicating from a long time ago. A long time ago. This is, like I said, they made a movie of it, 1992, Spike Lee. He made the movie quite well with Denzel Washington as the star, and you guys could check that out. It's very entertaining. It got info on it. It's about 3 hours long. If you could watch a movie like that, it's 3 hours long, but it has a lot of knowledge in it. Civil rights movement. After leaving the Nation of Islam, Malcolm X announced his willingness to work with the leaders of the civil rights movement, because a lot of people from the civil rights movement didn't. There's some of them. I shouldn't say a lot of them, but there's a percentage of them that didn't like Malcolm X, how he was doing things. Malcolm X announced his willingness to work with the leaders of the civil rights movement, though he advocated some changes to their policies. He felt that calling the movement a struggle for civil rights would keep the issue within the United States, while changing the focus to human rights would make it an international concern. I see what he is saying. He wanted to make the world see what was going on. The movement could then bring its complaints before the United Nations. So he had to make it not just like a local thing, not just an American thing. Had to kind of make it more international, so that it could be like human rights with the United Nations really, kind of shaming America in a way, where Malcolm X said the emerging nations of the world would add their support. See, that's why he done his campaign, Malcolm X. Now I see what he was doing. He was traveling the world, right? Certain places, talking to leaders. And then this is what he put out, right? For the human rights, for civil rights in America. Malcolm X argued that if the US government was unable to protect black people should protect themselves. So he believed that 100%. That's why they didn't like him. Black people should protect themselves. He said that he and other members of the OAAU were determined to defend themselves from aggressors, to secure freedom, justice, equality by any means necessary. That's the famous part. By any means necessary. And then the Black Panthers, they came around, and other groups similar to the Black Panthers. But Malcolm X stressed that global perspective he gained from the international travels. He emphasized the direct connection between the domestic struggle of African Americans for equal rights with the independent struggles of the third world nations. He said that African Americans were wrong when they thought of themselves as minorities. Globally, black people were the majority. So that's what he was saying. And those type of talks, those times, not popular for a black man to be talking like that. Although he no longer called for the separation of black people from white people. Malcolm X continued to advocate for black nationalism, which he defined as self-determination for African American community. In the last months of his life, however, Malcolm X began to reconsider his support for black nationalism after meeting with Northern African revolutionaries who at all appearance were white. After his Hajj, Malcolm X articulated a view of white people and racism that represented a deep change from the philosophy he had supported as a minister of the Nation of Islam. In a famous letter from Mecca, he wrote that his experience with white people during his pilgrimage convinced him to rearrange his thinking about race and toss it aside from previous conclusions. In a conversation with Gordon Parks 2 days before his assassination, Malcolm said. So he's talked, man, you see that? He talked to the media about how he felt a change. And then he got basically on a live killed 2 days later, right? 2 days later, he got killed. So he said, listening to leaders in Nasser Ben Bella and Nkrumah awakened me to the dangers of racism. I realized racism isn't just black and white problem. It brought bloodbaths to about every nation on earth at one time or another. So he realized a lot of stuff. He realized a lot of things, Malcolm. He's a big legacy, right? They transformed his, like, wherever he grew up, or they transformed this thing to, like, a special site, historical site. In Nebraska, there's a historical site because he's from Omaha, Nebraska. You would think Omaha, Nebraska, that's where X is from. Now, they're saying now, because his name became very popular for a lot of schools all around America, right? That's his legacy. And then that's how you know who Malcolm X is. In cities across the United States, Malcolm's birthday, May 19th, is celebrated as Malcolm X Day. The first known celebration of Malcolm X Day took place in Washington, D.C. in 1971. Do you guys still celebrate that? I don't really even see them show spotlight for that, right? Got to start to celebrate that. May 19th, right? They celebrate that day. The first known celebration of Malcolm X Day took place in Washington, D.C., 71, right? The city of Berkeley, California has recognized Malcolm X birthday as a citywide holiday since 79. I didn't even know that. So Malcolm X has a holiday in California since 1979. That's good. Many cities have renamed streets after Malcolm X. In 1987, New York Mayor Ed Koch reclaimed Lenox Avenue in Harlem renamed it to be named Malcolm X Boulevard. The name of Reed Avenue in Brooklyn, New York, was changed from Malcolm X what? Was changed to Malcolm X Boulevard. All these damn places, Boston, all around America. I can't even name all of them. That's how big of influence Malcolm X is. Very big. Very big. You guys should watch the film, and please subscribe, people. Subscribe. Watch the film. Now, a lot of the stuff Malcolm X been through and the people at that time been through, especially the Black Panthers, he birthed them, kind of, the Black Panthers. Now you see what's going on. Black Panthers, is coming back. You're hearing about it in social media. There's some controversy about the group who came out from, this whole thing with the ICE. They're saying they're defending people. People was like associating that group as defending immigrants, and after then the real Black Panthers come out and said stop using that name because we're not for saving protecting the immigrants. I'm talking about now with the ICE stuff, what's going on. So the Black Panthers, these guys, I forgot where they're from exactly, but they came out, this group, saying they're gonna defend against ICE. They got excited. These guys walking around with guns and shit like that. But the real Black Panther Party, I guess the new real Black Panther Party, came out and said for them to stop using that name. But the point is, there's all types of stuff going on in America right now. It's really going on really bad. Everybody is like, in an uproar because of the ICE, because of Donald Trump, and more other shit. So this stuff was going on in the 60s. From the 50s, if you want to call it, all through the 60s. Malcolm X's career spans from when he comes out of prison. When he gets parole or whatever, 52. So moving up through the 50s, and when it up to 65, assassinated, and the law enforcement doesn't do anything at that event. They don't flinch really. That's what they're saying. No flinching. And then he was taken out by a couple individuals. One of the guys who admitted to unaliving Malcolm X says the other two guys are not the real guys. There's other guys, not the two guys who they claim assassinated Malcolm X, and they served prison time. Those guys served prison time. So this is how dirty it could be. The real guys, I'm going to put it, conspiracy theories. The real guys are government agents who they let go and live their life with their wife and their family and everything. And then they waited years to say, oh, the guys who are locked up in prison, it's not them. It's not them. We made a mistake, because they knew it from the beginning. It was a mistake. They knew it from the beginning. It was bullshit. But guilt, hit some people. And those two guys came out of prison, right? They took those guys out of prison. So don't think anybody's a fool. That's why the family is suing. Because the family is saying, wait a minute. The two individuals who you guys said killed my father is out of prison now. The main guy, he's out of prison too, and he has a mosque. The guy who admitted to killing Malcolm X is not locked up in prison. You got to think these guys didn't really get life. Either way, like they're saying that it's the government. Now it's going back to the government. You see, now social media kind of fucks up things because people are questioning it. People are smarter than before, right? With evidence. So all the people, like it or not, guilt, good or bad, they are not in prison. There's nobody in prison for Malcolm X's murder for life. Nobody. Nobody's in prison. They served their time, right? But did they serve their time? That, like, they took them out of prison. They said they didn't kill them because of evidence. Some evidence what came out that the FBI and the CIA were basically part of some screw up job. They don't really want to give you the details. They're saying the FBI, right? The police department and probably the CIA was part of a screw up job, but they don't really want to go deep into that because it shows a lot of dirt. It shows a lot of dirt. Like right now, right? You have to really want to look up history, and especially the civil rights movement, to understand who Malcolm X is. Who you hear about Martin Luther King all the time. You do hear about Malcolm X, but not like Martin Luther King. And you don't hear about like the deep stuff. That's why I encourage you guys to watch the movie. There's a lot of characters in front of this whole story. They accuse the Nation of Islam. I mean, yeah, the Nation of Islam because of certain things what was put out there. But I'm hearing a guy who was in charge of a certain a secretary was a former FBI agent, a former FBI agent that did not like Ma- Malcolm. Of course, he didn't like Malcolm because he was a little bit different. But a former FBI agent was part of the nation. Think of it. You're not hearing anybody say this. I don't know if any other content maker is going to tell you this, right? I'm giving you Black history, but a former FBI agent was part of the Nation of Islam and didn't like Malcolm. So, come on now. He has friends up there, man. He has friends. So when that whole thing was going on, made sure nothing, no one reacted to gunshots. All these gunshots was going on, and there were surveilling. What's his name, Malcolm, wherever he went, especially with a big group, law enforcement, the works was around. Even if they tried to be invisible, they were around. So they were watching Malcolm so much. They were watching whoever he's associated a lot. They knew that he was getting so-called threatened, right? Like they knew, right? He was getting threatened by who? Who was he getting threatened by? Just like they're trying to make it look like it was a separate body. But now they come out, the things have come out that they were, probably part of the reason saying they are, not probably, they are the reason Malcolm died. And the family wanted $100 million. $100 million the family wants. $100 million. So this shows you, can you trust your government? This is the example. I'm just giving you an example now. Around those times, you had, like I said, JFK assassinated. They said the mafia done that. Malcolm X assassinated. They said the Nation of Islam done that. Then Martin Luther King assassinated. Then they say there's all types of stories with that, and that probably comes back to the government. And then JFK's brother dies too. So who killed? So you see all of that in a short period of time. In a short period of time. So now, with technology and knowledge, if you do your knowledge and do your research, it looks very funny, right? It looks very funny because they're following him even when he was going overseas. After returning to the US, Malcolm X addressed a wide variety of audiences. He spoke regularly at meetings held by the MMI and the OAAU and was one of the most sought after speakers on college campuses. That's dangerous. That's like Charlie Kirk. You see what happened to Charlie Kirk? I don't want to compare them two because Malcolm X is completely different, way past Charlie Kirk, but he was going to campuses where young people are, colleges, right? One of his top aides later wrote that he welcomed every opportunity to speak to college students. He also addressed public meetings of the Socialist Workers' Party, speaking at their militant labor forum. He was interviewed on the subjects of segregation and the Nation of Islam by Robert Penn Warren for Warren's 1965 book, Who Spoke for the Negroes. So him speaking, I think the nation didn't like that he was speaking about them. That's what it was too. So the government used if we're saying the government, accusing the government of this, they use a perfect situation, right, with confusion and illusion to make it look like it's not them, and there's this war going on between the Nation of Islam and Malcolm X and his new found faith and movement, and that's why he died. Throughout 1964, as his conflict with the Nation of Islam intensified, okay, he was threatened. Now let's see his funeral. The public viewing, February 23rd, February 26th, at the Unity Funeral Home in Harlem, was attended by some 14,000 to 30,000 mourners for the funeral. On February 27th, loudspeakers are set up for the overflow crowd outside Harlem's 1,000-seat Faith Temple of Church of God Christ. Local television stations carried the service live. So it was on local television services. About 14 to 30,000 mourners, a lot of people, of course. This is Malcolm X, right? That's very big. There are those who will consider it their duty as friends of the Negro people to tell us to revile him, to flee even from the presence of his memory, to save ourselves by writing him out of history of our turbulent times. So someone is saying, of course, he's kind of written out of history. Controversial. No one doesn't want to talk about it. No one doesn't want to talk about it. But very controversial, right? He was talking against the government, like not really. He called out the government. He was calling out the government. He was talking about slavery, how black people been treated in America. He was talking about the hypocrisy of black people going to the military and how they're treated when they come back home. He was talking about a lot of social issues in America, which wasn't popular at the time for a black man to be talking against the government. They were in war, they were in the Vietnam War. So I'm hearing even, this is another thing, just like out of this whole story with Malcolm X. I'm hearing even Marvel Comics, they got inspired. It was the X-Man. You know the X-Man? Guess where the X-Man comes from, really? Guess where the X-Man comes from? Malcolm X, right? So they said Magneto was inspired. They got the character Magneto inspired from Malcolm X. And Professor X, they said Martin Luther King. But look, Professor X, look at all that. Professor X is Martin Luther King. Magneto is Malcolm X. So, and it was the X-Men. So even that, even and they called he's the leader of the mutants, Magneto, or whatever the story. But yeah, very controversial. This is Black History, people. I'm giving you a Black History series special of a controversial figure, but he's a hero to many. He's a hero to a lot of people. A lot of movements came out of Malcolm X. A lot of movements came out of him, right? The Five Percenters. If you know about the Five Percenters, a lot of rappers, hip hop artists are Five Percenters. Most famous ones are Wu-Tang Clan. They follow a lot of teachings, what is associated, what was influenced by Malcolm X. So, who killed Malcolm X? People want to blame, like I said, the nation. It's really they're saying it's really the government, the family of Malcolm X, right? El-Shabazz is blaming the government, the CIA, the FBI, the same FBI Trump got out there with the ICE. The same government Donald Trump got out there with the ICE. That's who they're blaming, right? He still got his daughter alive, Malcolm X. He still got his family around and stuff. They want 100 million. It should be more than 100 million. Probably should be way more than 100 million right now, right? So I don't know. Anybody know about Malcolm X? Or they don't? I guarantee people do know about Malcolm X. And to some, he's a villain still. To some, he's a hero. But when you really dig the story up, like I said, in prison, he was kind of molded. When he went to prison in 1946 for burglary and larceny, and he spent about almost 10 years about in prison, became a Muslim the whole time. He was released 1952, and he became an active member in the NOI, the Nation of Islam. He became a member right away. He was probably a member in prison, and very influential, opened a lot of temples. He done a lot of work, 12 years for the nation, right? So where did it go wrong? Is when he got too big. I think this is what happened. When he got too influential, the other nation, there's certain people in the nation who are jealous of his relationship with, Muhammad, uh, Elijah Muhammad. People got jealous of Malcolm having a good relationship with Elijah Muhammad. That's what I think happened, right? So that relationship then broke apart down the line. We don't know if somebody came in between, which they are saying there's this informant, which all organizations they put informants in, who worked with the FBI. So why has this not been spotlighted? Like people probably know about this if they care, but this is to show you a lot of the shit that is hidden. That's why you can't believe everything they say. That's why, like Trump, he likes to say fake news. I would like to know what Trump feels about even Malcolm X, because he feels when, and I heard this from Donald Trump, when the civil rights came in. I mean, I guess he said white men lost a lot of stuff, right? Probably right, because every culture or every nation was welcome to live freely in America. It was black people who fought for their rights, civil rights, and that made anybody else who was a minority have rights, more rights, because of black people fighting for the civil rights. Malcolm X was a amplified figure in those times with Martin Luther King, and he was a big threat, right? And how it started, I think how his spotlight came, there are some individuals, gentlemen, getting beat. The story is there's some guys getting harassed by the police, and him and a few other members, I think, of the nation, they saw this individual getting beat up, and they followed him to the police station. They followed the individual to the police station so he would not get even more hurt, and then they bailed him out, and that's what gave I would say Malcolm X. He was on the spotlight, of course. After that situation, I think somebody, one of the police chiefs, said no man should have that much power. I would like to get exactly what happened there. It said no man should have that much power. They bailed this guy out of jail, and I don't think the nation really might have approved that. That's what the story could be. I don't think they really approved what Malcolm X done there, but that's what really got him on the spotlight because of that, right? So, from his adoption of the Nation of Islam in 1952 until he broke with it in 64, Malcolm X promoted the nation's teachings. These are the beliefs. The the black people are the original people of the world. The white people are devils. This is what's coming from them, right? That the demise of the white race is soon, right? Louis E. Lamarck said that those who don't understand biblical prophecy wrongly label him as a racist, as a hate teacher, or as being anti white, or as teaching black supremacy. One of the goals of the civil rights movement was to end disenfranchisement of the African Americans, but the Nation of Islam forbade its members from participating in voting and other aspects of political process. The NAACP and other civil rights organizations denounced him, and the Nation of Islam was irresponsible extremists whose views did not represent the common interests of African Americans. So they are villainized. The Nation of Islam was villainized by a lot of other black groups, especially Christian groups. They are villainized. They weren't looked on very good by a certain section of African Americans. And I swear this guy, Louis E. Lomarx, was the FBI agent who's talking, if I look it up. Again, the FBI agent, right? As being equally critical of the civil rights and denounced Martin Luther King. Okay, so let me get back to the guy who ratted him out. So let me read this now, all right, for you people. In 1961, Malcolm X spoke at a NOI rally alongside George Lincoln Rockwell, the head of the American Nazi Party. Rockwell saw overlap between black nationalism and white supremacy, while the civil rights movement fought against racial segregation. Malcolm X advocated that the complete separation of African Americans from whites. He proposed that African Americans should return to Africa, and that in the interim of a separate country for black people in America should be created. That's what it was before, how he believed, right? He rejected the civil rights movement and strategy of nonviolence, arguing that black people should defend and advance themselves by any means necessary. His speeches had powerful effect on the audience, who were generally African American in northern and western cities. Many of them, tired of being told what to wait for freedom, justice, equality, and respect, felt that the articulation their complaints better did the civil rights movement. Let me read that shit over again. It says, they felt that he articulated, they felt he articulated for them. He was communicating right for them how they felt in America. So he wasn't all for the fully, being nice and trying to get freedom. He said any means necessary, any means necessary. And he believed in separation when he was with the nation. When he was with the nation of Islam, he believed a little bit different way, and then that changed after he left America, right? Opened his mind, and he changed that whole rhetoric or whatever, changed that whole way of speaking. Malcolm X is widely regarded as the second most influential leader of the Nation of Islam after Elijah Muhammad. He is largely credited with helping the group's dramatic increase in membership between early 50s and early 60s, from around 1,200 to between 50,000 and 100,000 members, with up to 25 active attending, according to estimates. Let me read that again. This show you what Malcolm done. Malcolm is widely regarded as the second most influential after Elijah Muhammad, of course. He is largely credited with helping the group bring about 50,000 to 100,000 members. So that's why the FBI and other people was scared of Malcolm. Malcolm was he inspired a lot of people. He inspired the boxer Muhammad Ali to join the nation. Yep. And the two became close in January. Became close. In January 1964, Ali brought Malcolm X and his family to Miami to watch him train for his fight against Sonny Liston. When Malcolm left the Nation of Islam, he tried to convince Ali, who had just been renamed by Elijah Muhammad, to join him in converting to Sunni Islam. So Elijah kind of took Muhammad from Malcolm X in a way, like, right? But Ali instead broke ties with him, later describing the break as one of his greatest regrets. So he broke ties with Malcolm X because of he wanted to show respect to Elijah Muhammad. I'm talking about Muhammad Ali, right? The greatest of all time boxer. He was good with Malcolm, but you see what was going on? There was a fight going on, like a power fight. Malcolm X mentored and guided. Check this out, people. Malcolm X mentored and guided Louis, right? Louis X, later known as Louis Farrakhan, the head of, the Nation of Islam, who eventually became the leader of the Nation of Islam. Malcolm X also served as a mentor and confidant to Elijah Muhammad's son. I didn't even know that. Wallace D. Muhammad. The son told Malcolm X about his skepticism towards his father, unorthodox approach to Islam. Wallace Muhammad was execute ex, what, from the nation, and mean that he was kicked out the Nation of Islam several times, although he was eventually readmitted. So the son of Elijah Muhammad, right? He questioned his father, what his father's practices, and then he was kicked out a couple times. And I heard they say that he's back again with them. So these groups, like, no group is perfect, but these groups all have a history. You know, if it's a revolution, um, if it's like people are revolting, there's all these characters that you hear about, and it makes history, makes a lot of history. All these characters, it's a lot of history. What do you know about Malcolm X? It's Black History Month, right? So this is what happened. This is why it kind of went as a split. Now it's gonna really get deep and, kind of nasty and shit like that. I'm not gonna read the whole thing, but this is what's been going on. Sexual misbehavior by Elijah Muhammad. Rumors were circulating that Muhammad was conducting extramarital affairs with young nation secretaries, which would constitute a serious violation of the nation's teachings. After the first discounting of rumors, Malcolm X came to believe them after he spoke with Muhammad's son Wallace and the girls making the accusations in April 1963. Muhammad confirmed the rumors that same year, attempting to justify his behavior by referring to precedents set by biblical prophets. So, if this is true, right, because it's in the movie and stuff, it is an accusation. This is what the FBI or the powers that be probably used as a way to say, yo, look what's going on with these guys. Like, uh, Malcolm was talking. He had broken off with the Nation of Islam. He was getting big himself. He wasn't calling white people devils anymore. He changed his belief, and then look, that's why he died. It was the nation who killed him. That's how it would be put. But if you wanted me to put it in a conspiracy theory type of way, right? And this might be controversial. I don't know if I should say this, but if I was to do it, talk in yes, Malcolm X, the conspiracy way now, and I don't want to say this. This is Malcolm, but Malcolm got locked up for at least 10 years, and they're saying that he got molded in prison as he became a Muslim. And then when he came out of prison, he became one of the most powerful, people in the Nation of Islam. Remember, the Nation of Islam was going on way before Malcolm was around. So that Malcolm came out, what, 52. The Nation of Islam was big from probably what, the 20s, the 30s, and stuff like that. So some people might put on Malcolm, was Malcolm, really working for the government? Was Malcolm a person who they locked up and they kind of manufactured this guy in a group, right? Came out and infiltrated the nation. Imagine if it was that story, that he infiltrated the nation, he broke off, and he knew about, like, he was the guy behind the scenes, like Donnie Brasco. Like Malcolm X was the Donnie Brasco of the civil rights. That for you to come out of prison or be safe in prison and come out of prison, you got to infiltrate this group, become very important, become a leader in the nation, and find out about what they're up to. And then maybe at some point, Malcolm, this is just conspiracy, he became really entrenched in trying to help his people. So instead of being agent for the government, he turned and he started to try to want to do real things. And when he was doing the real things, this is what happened to him. That's just another way of putting it. It could be that way because it's conspiracy. This whole story is conspiracy. But I'm saying, is it possible that Malcolm X was always working for the government from he came out of prison? Because the story is, man, he got locked up 1946, right? Came out 10 years later as a Muslim. As soon as he came out, he was really popular, working legitly, not a criminal anymore, right? Changed his name from Little or whatever. They called him X, right? X is because, they don't want to go by the slave name. That was the whole thing, not to go by the slave name and stuff like that. So that's why they put X. That was a popular thing to do, right? So a beef started with him and Elijah Muhammad because Mr. X was, hearing about rumors. And Elijah Muhammad's son came to Malcolm and told him about his father. And then, that's when the heat was starting, right? Lies. It could be, like I'm saying, it's conspiracy. Just recently, they brought it up. It's just recently the family said they're going to sue for about what, $100 million. They're suing. They believe it's the CIA, the NYPD, right, and the FBI. They believe it's the FBI, right, who really took him out. But how do you charge the FBI? How do you charge the CIA? You know what? Not, you gotta really listen to, like, sometimes the news, how they flip flop, because they're saying, even like the CIA admitted of flooding the certain places in America with the drugs. The same thing what they're accusing Maduro or the cartels of doing, right? They came out a couple years ago, and I could look this up, right? Because this is linked to Malcolm X and all that. When after these movements, everything just fell apart. America fell in depression. People start taking drugs a lot, especially in the 60s, going to the 70s. The Vietnam War was going on. Families were getting, like, a lot of single parent families were being created. A lot of men, they left to go to the war. A lot of them died. You got to think a lot of guys died, left a lot of children by themselves. Um, no one talks about those stories, right? So he changed his name later on too. I just want to remind people: el-Hajj Malik el-Shabazz, besides Malcolm X, right? So it's el-Hajj Malik el-Shabazz. Bless him. But this is one of the biggest conspiracies. You're talking about Epstein files and all that stuff. Nah, there's a whole bunch of files what need to be talked about, and this one is with the FBI and the CIA. They're bringing out all these files, but let's talk about the law enforcement not doing anything that day, right? When he died in February. It was February this month, 21st, 1965, right? Now it's 2006. Sorry, but you are wrong. Don't create your own narrative. Don't listen to those who seek to damage the name and reputation of our people, our struggles, our liberations. But no, it was not me who's saying this, right? They were blaming the Nation of Islam for years. They're blaming. I know it's not no Nation of Islam. That's what I'm pointing out, Derek. I know it's not no Nation of Islam, but the way how they use the Nation of Islam as a cover to make it look like it was black people fighting black people, but it wasn't like that. But I'm saying there's another story what some people could twist before it goes out. I'm already telling you a story because this hasn't come out. Soon they might say that Malcolm X was an agent. That's the way how they deflect the shit, that he was working for the government. So that's a way to deflect, saying, oh, because the family wants 100 million. Remember, the family wants 100 million, saying the FBI done this shit and blah blah blah. So if they're saying, if they were to come out, oh, your father was working with us, but who, even if he was working with, if he was, this is allegedly, right? If he was working with the FBI, now what happened? What happened with his death? Who killed him? Who killed him? Because the guy who admitted to killing him, saying that the other two guys who they arrested, who got, you know, they got off, are not the guys. The guys who they blamed and went to prison for years, they got released years and years ago. They got money, and one of them got money. Malcolm was onto the Heritage Foundation even when they were wearing hoods. Yep, yep. But right now, the FBI don't look too good. Right now, a lot of people are fighting for their rights once again in America. They feel that their rights are being, attacked, right? In America by a guy named Donald Trump. Now, if somebody was around like Malcolm X today, what would Donald Trump do? He would want to lock him up. Donald Trump would want to lock Malcolm X up. Back then, it was a little bit. You would think they would lock him up then too, but they killed him. Instead of locking him up, they just assassinated him. They didn't lock him up; they assassinated him, right? And they couldn't make him like they couldn't make talk about him too bad. Only his past when he was arrested, right? So, criminal career. From age 14 to 21, Malcolm held a variety of jobs while living with his half sister Ella Little Collins in Roxbury, a largely African American neighborhood of Boston. After a short time in Flint, Michigan, he moved to New York City's Harlem neighborhood in 1943, where he founded employment on the New Haven Railroad and engaged in drug dealing, gambling, racketeering, robbery, and pimping. According to biography Bruce Perry, Malcolm also occasionally had sex with other. No, yo, you see, I can't read this. Oh man, what they're gonna put here now? They're saying all this shit. You never heard about this. This is what I'm gonna read. You can't even believe everything. According to the biography by Bruce Perry, Malcolm also occasionally had sex with other men, usually for money. Though his conjecture had been disputed by those who knew him. He befriended John Elroy Sanford, a fellow dishwasher, at Jimmy's Chicken Shack in Harlem, who aspired to be a professional comedian. That's Red Fox, right? Both men had reddish hair, so Sanford was called Chicago Red. Remember Sanford and Son? So that was really his name, right? Red Fox nickname. After his hometown, the Malcolm was known as Detroit Red. Years later, Sanford became famous comedian actor Red Fox. I heard of that. That was his friends. But that rumor about the sleeping with men, I never heard about that shit. You see, certain things come out big and certain things you don't hear of unless you do some research. This could be even fake, but even if it's fake, they're putting it in like it's real, right? Some people don't want to hear that. See, it says according to biography. So people say Bruce Penner, you're friggin' a liar, man. That Malcolm had occasional sex with men, right? They'll say he's a damn liar because that is very controversial. Summoned by the local draft board for military service in World War II in late 1943, he feigned mental disturbance by rambling and declaring, "I want to be sent down south, organize them and soldiers, steal us some guns, and kill us some crack." You know what I'm going to say. He was declared mentally disqualified for military service. Is that what happened? I never heard. Oh, you're talking about Red Fox. That must be Red Fox, right? In late 1945, Malcolm returned to Boston where he and four compliants committed a series of burglaries. So this is what put Malcolm in prison, right? For burglaries, targeting wealthy families. Should have never done that. In 1946, he was arrested while picking up a stolen watch he had left at a shop for repairs. Damn. And in February began serving a sentence of 8 to 10 years. You see, Charleston State Prison for larceny and breaking and entering. In 1947, he was transferred to Concord Reformatory, where he served 15 months before transferring again to Norfolk Prison. Different prisons, three prisons. So when did he really? It must be the last prison where he transformed into being a Muslim, right? So he went to three prisons, and it's because they caught him trying to, this watch what he brought at a shop to repair. Set up. They caught him, right? That's actually true. Okay. When Malcolm was in prison, he met fellow convict John Bembley. This is when it started. Self-educated man. He would later describe as the first man I have ever seen command total respect with words. Under Bembley's influence, Malcolm developed a voracious appetite for reading. At this time, several of his siblings wrote to him about Nation of Islam, a relatively new religious movement preaching black self-reliance and ultimately the return of the African diaspora to Africa, which was undergoing the process of independence, where they would be free from the white American and European domination. He showed scant interest at first, but after his brother Reginald wrote in 1948, Malcolm, don't eat any more pork and don't smoke any more cigarettes. I'll show you how to get out of prison. He also instantly quit smoking and began to refuse pork. That's how it started. You see the transformation from prison. Kept going and going and going and going, but this is where it gets really spicy, right? During which Reginald detailed the group's teachings, including the notion that white people are considered. Okay, I read that. In late 1948, Malcolm wrote to Elijah, the leader of the Nation of Islam, Muhammad, advised him to renounce his past and humble bow to pray to God and promise never to engage in destruction and behavior again. Though he later recalled the inner struggle he had before bending his knees to pray, Malcolm soon became a member of the Nation of Islam, maintaining a regular con- con- correspondence with Muhammad. So from 48, he started talking to Elijah. He was released 1952, but from 48, he had a relationship with the head of the Nation of Islam, right? In 1950, the FBI opened a file on Malcolm after he wrote a letter from a prison to President Harry S. Truman. Oh God. So this is what happened. He wrote a letter to the president. That's like writing a letter to Trump, right? Expressing opposition to the Korean War and declaring himself a communist. That year, he also began signing his name Malcolm X, Muhammad, instructing his followers to leave their family names behind when they joined the Nation of Islam and use X instead of when the time was right after they had proven their sincerity. He said he would reveal the Muslim's original name. Okay. In his autobiography, Malcolm explained that X symbolized the true African family name that he could never know. For me, my X replaced the white slave master name of Little, which some blue-eyed devil named Little had imposed upon my paternal, he was deadly, forebears. How he talked, man, in the early days. Remember, he's coming out of prison. He's in prison. Before he was a Muslim, he was, sorry to say, like a thug, right? He was a thug doing all things. Big up to yeah, much respect to Nation of Islam, right? Before he was part of the nation, he was a thug, so he was thinking a little bit different. After his parole in 1952, Malcolm X visited Elijah Muhammad in Chicago. In June 1953, he was named Assistant Minister of the Nation. See how fast? Of the Nation's Temple number 1 in Detroit. Later that year, he established Boston Temple number 11. In March in 1954, he expanded the Temple number to 12 in Philadelphia. 2 months later, he was selected to lead Temple number 7 in Harlem, where he rapidly expanded its membership. So he was going around, man. Malcolm X was going around for the nation. Of course, the FBI was surveilling him, right? So it says in 1953, the FBI began surveillance on him, turning its attention from Malcolm X's possible communist associations to his rapid ascension in the Nation of Islam. During 1955, Malcolm X continued his successful recruitment of members on behalf of the Nation of Islam. He established temples in Springfield, Massachusetts, number 13. A lot of these, man, they had money. These guys have money. Hartford, Connecticut, number 14th. Atlanta, number 15th. Hundreds of African Americans were joining the Nation of Islam every month. So that was a threat to the government, straight up, people. That's a threat to the government. Besides his skill as a speaker, Malcolm X had an impressive physical presence. He was 6 foot 3 inches, 1.91 meters tall, and weighed about 180 pounds, 82 kilograms. One writer describes him as powerful built, and another a memorizing, handsome, and always spotless, well-groomed man. So he was married in 1955 to Betty Sanders, right? Met Malcolm X after one of his lectures, then began at a dinner party. Soon she was regularly attending, so he married Betty Shabazz. Keeps going. The point is, we all know if you have common sense, it's 2026, and things have came out the bag that the government was responsible for Malcolm X's assassination, and they blame the Nation of Islam. Look at the Bible stuff people have been saying. It's a perfect way to cover their ass by blaming the organization he had internal problems with. Perfect way to cover their ass. Internal problems, take the attention off of us, the government, right? So this is the story of Malcolm X, how he became aware. I'm going to read it. The American public first became aware of Malcolm X in 1957 after Hinton Johnson, a Nation of Islam member, was beaten by two New York City police officers. That's what happened. On April 26, Johnson and two others, passerbys, also Nation of Islam members, saw the officers beating the African American man with nightsticks when they attempted to intervene, shouting, "You're not Alabama." What? This is beaten. What? You're not Alabama. This is New York. One of the officers turned to Johnson, beating him so severely that he suffered brain contusions and subdued hemorrhaging. Oh, damn. All four African American men were arrested. Alerted by witnesses, Malcolm and a small group of Muslims went to the police station, demanded to see Johnson. Police initially denied that any Muslims were being held. He denied that. But when the crowd grew to about 500, they allowed Malcolm X to speak with Johnson. Afterwards, Malcolm insisted arranging for an ambulance to take Johnson to the Harlem hospital. This is what brought the attention, man. Johnson's injuries were treated, and by the time he was returned to the police station, some 4,000 people had gathered outside. Inside of the station, Malcolm X and the attorney were making bail arrangements for the two of the Muslims. Johnson was not bailed, and the police said he could not go back to the hospital until the arraignment the following day. Considering the situation to be at a certain level, Malcolm stepped outside the station house and gave a hand signal to the crowd, and Nation members silently left, after which time the rest of the crowd also dispersed. That was big, people. They didn't like that, the police and the law. One police officer told New York Amsterdam News, "No man should have that much power." You know who has a song like that? Kanye, right? No man should have that much power. Within a month, the New York City Police Department arranged to keep Malcolm under surveillance. It also made inquiries with authorities into other cities in which he had lived and prisons in which he had served. So they're checking up his background, of course. They're checking up his jail records and whatever prison background and wherever he went, right? So throughout these cities, he had lived in prisons in which he had served time. A grand jury declined to indict the officers who beat Johnson in October. Malcolm X sent an angry telegram to the police commissioner. Soon, the police department assigned undercover officers to infiltrate the Nation of Islam. That was his downfall. From those times, from that time, they really like were spotlighting him, right? You see what happened there with Malcolm? In September 1960, the United Nations General Assembly in New York City, Malcolm was invited to the official function of several African nations. He met Gamba Abdel Nasser of Egypt, Ahmed Sekou Toure of Guinea, and Kenneth Kada of Zambia. Damn. Of African Congress and the African National Congress. Fidel Castro also attended the assembly, and Malcolm met publicly with him as part of the welcoming committee of Harlem community leaders. Castro was significantly impressed by Malcolm X and suggested a private meeting. After 2 hours of talking, Castro invited Malcolm X to visit Cuba. He didn't like that. FBI didn't like that shit, man. You see, there's a whole bunch of stuff. FBI did not like that Malcolm was talking with Castro, man. Because Castro was with the Russians, communists, and that's why that's why they're labeling Malcolm X a communist, right? That's why they were labeling him that, because of who he was talking to. There's so much stuff. There's so much dirt, LAPD, like, there's so much stuff with Malcolm X, but I hope people are really taking this in. Learn, learn history, right? I don't need to read no more. People, look that up. What I know of Malcolm X, he influenced black people in America to stand up for their rights. Stand up like Bob Marley saying. He influenced a lot of Americans to stand up for their rights, black man to be proud, basically that you could be militant, that you could protect yourself, to know to know the laws, right? 100% to know the laws of the land. That's why Black Panthers were so influential and so big, because they knew what they were doing. They didn't just go out there with guns. They actually read the Constitution and used that for their protection. Would you rather watch your hair grow or the real OG? I don't know. That's funny. I see. I get that joke. But yeah, Black History Month, people. How much you know about Malcolm X? You know what this shows me? A lot of people don't know about Malcolm X. Even though you got the internet, even though he's been in a lot of black culture, even though a lot of rappers like Public Enemy promote Malcolm X, even though there's been a movie that's been made by Spike Lee, and a lot of people are influenced by Malcolm X, like the Black Panther Party and a lot of other people, they still suppress a lot of stuff, right? They still suppress the knowledge because they use to confuse and put an illusion that the Nation of Islam or other black group was fully behind the assassination of um, Malcolm X, because they're going to put the stereotype that black people are, black on black crime. After when Malcolm X died, right, and Martin Luther King died, and segregation was, everyone was together, it actually became worse for the black communities, right? Crime, drugs became worse all around America. So when people saw a leader or somebody they looked up to get killed in the streets, how did it make a lot of black people feel? Especially when Martin Luther King died, it made them feel that, no matter what we do, they still want to keep us the same slaves, right? Because they killed two leaders who we had, and now it made a lot of people depressed. It made a lot of people start doing all types of stuff. America was crazy in the 60s and the 70s. 70s, all the drugs, the aftermath, right? A lot of drugs became very popular. A lot of cities became infested with the drugs. The Black Panther Party was starting to die off in the mid 70s, from 66 up to maybe 75. And then the drugs took over the communities. Gangs took over the communities. No more leaders. There was gang leaders was the influence. It was gang leaders. It wasn't people like Malcolm X. It was gang leaders, people. It wasn't people like Malcolm X. But now we're living in a time where you need somebody like Malcolm X. We're living in a time where you need somebody like Malcolm X. There's no one talking against Trump. Everybody's scared to talk against Donald Trump. Donald Trump's a big bad wolf, a big bad guy. Everybody's scared to talk against him. But someone like Donald Trump, I mean, could not deal with Malcolm X. That's why he can't deal with the Canadian Prime Minister, somebody who's intelligent. If it was up to him, he would lock up Carney the same way he would lock up Malcolm X if Malcolm X was alive today. But now I have read a lot, and I told you guys a lot, putting the picture together, put all the pieces to the puzzle together, right? And other times, like I'm saying, his grandson, let me show you this. His grandson, right? You hear this? His grandson, Malcolm el-Shabazz, October 8th, 1984, May 9th, 2013. The grandson of civil rights activist Malcolm X and Betty Shabazz, through the daughter, Qualiba Shabazz, Malcolm Shabazz, made headlines for multiple arrests during his life including setting fire that killed his grandmother. So that grandmother, now that's how I correct it, that's Malcolm X's wife. So his grandson set fire to an apartment that killed Malcolm X's wife around that time, right? He was murdered in Mexico May 9th, 2013, at the age of 28. I don't know how much people know about that story, but this is Betty Shabazz, right? So she died in a fire. That's how she went out in the 2000s. She died in a fire. That's what they say, and it was the grandson that killed her. But I don't think he even went to, I don't think he went to prison. I think it was a accident and stuff, right? He didn't go to prison for that. There was always someone in the CIA or the FBI in the top three Black Panther movements back in the 70s. Yes, they infiltrated a lot of groups. A lot of groups was infiltrated. You're right, Black Panthers. It's like the Donnie Brasco thing. Like I'm gonna put that as an example with the mafia. Yeah, they infiltrated down to even back in the days with Marcus Garvey. They infiltrated with the Nation of Islam. They infiltrated with the Black Panthers, right? A lot of them when they got locked up, they know how to flip them and put them back out on the street, and then they would do certain favors for the government. So you are right, Lauren Diamond, right? You are right. So that's why the family is suing the government. Malcolm X's family. See, this guy even got assassinated. A lot of people got assassinated. Who was part of? These are the groups what was getting built up after, you know, Malcolm lost his life. These were the groups what was threatening America, right? But this was the individual Malcolm really looked up to. Like Malcolm put a lot of work into helping this man. Malcolm really put a lot of work into helping this man and the Nation of Islam and build a whole bunch of, or help build a lot of temples with the congregation. And then once he left, it created a situation with separation, right? Once he left. Once he left the nation, Malcolm, it created a lot of stuff, people, right? By any means necessary. That's what was going on. By any means necessary. So guaranteed in the end times, like the last days of Malcolm X, he probably had a weapon with him, right? He was, he should have always had a bodyguard with him or he had a weapon with him. He believes in self-defense. But that day, right, February 21st, the Auburn Ballroom, no security guards next to him. Nothing. That's how they got rid of I don't know. So he said there was always someone in the CIA. Yeah, yeah. Much respect, OG Kicks. Yeah. Um, this is a Black History series special, and people, please subscribe. Please subscribe. So, um, now, is there any leaders we could even go to? No, there's no leaders out there. And if there was, they'll probably put shame on their name, right? Is it true Malcolm tried to return back to the nation and sent word for reconciliation and then he was assassinated? Maybe that could be. You don't know. There's a lot of conspiracies, right? Let me read that again, Derek. Is it true that Malcolm tried to return back to the nation and sent word for reconciliation? Then he was assassinated. That's very, that's something. There's all types of conspiracies. I said one version, which is not a popular version of a conspiracy that from prison he was kind of molded from the prison to become Muslim, and then he was in this group, the Nation, right? Who were the people who recruited him? Who really was Bembe? Who was that guy in the prison? Remember, um, I'm gonna hit you guys with this. Malcolm's father was part of a group before him, and I don't know if the story is accurate in the movie of the Malcolm X movie that they're saying Malcolm X's father was killed by Ku Klux Klan members. So Malcolm X's father, if he was a Garveyite, the government was watching him from a long time. Remember, when his parents both passed, he basically went to foster homes. Yes, I said an orphanage before. No, foster homes. He went to a lot of foster homes and some family members. So he was going through something before he became Malcolm, right? So going foster home and getting into the criminal lifestyle as a young man, doing a lot of criminal stuff. He didn't have no parents anymore, no guidance. And then he got locked up for a watch, some stolen watch. They locked him up and for burglary and larceny for like what 10 years. So he lost 10 years. 1946, right? So remember, he's born like what 25, so 46 he's young, right? Serves about a good almost 10 years. So what 46, 47, 48, 49, 50, 51, 52, 53. So about what 7 years. I don't know why they say 10 years. About 7 years or so he served. Released. I think he was released on bail. But all of this is because he's a black Muslim. Like that, being a black Muslim way back in those times was like alien to people. Like it's still alien to some people now. People just got used to uh, like the knowledge, and some still don't have the knowledge of about the Muslim culture. Like people started to know about Muslims more after September 11th. Let me say that again. A lot of people started to know more about the Muslim culture or that community and gave it stereotypes after 9/11, and that's way years way after Malcolm. So a black Muslim in America way before social media was really big was like kind of like different to people. It was a different thing. And Malcolm was completely different and revolutionary. That's what they say. Malcolm was revolutionary. He changed his way of beliefs. He stopped promoting the Nation of Islam's ideology, and because he went to Hajj, so he stopped promoting the ideology because he went to Hajj, and he saw white Muslims, saw different cultures that are Muslims, and that changed his whole way of doing things. And the nation did not like that because it made them look like they're doing something bad. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad gave Malcolm the world stage and made him his national representative. Malcolm played into their hands. Elijah was the target. Elijah was the target? Well, right now, if you say Elijah was the target, they're saying that Malcolm did not agree with certain practices what he was finding out about Elijah, right? That Elijah was going with young, like he had a lot of wives, young girls, like he's going with like basically underage. Nowadays, that would be like like the Epstein type of shit. That's looked on very bad, right? You've been a member, okay? I've been a member of the Nation of Islam for 40 years, brother, and I can't tell you that was a narrative to somebody else. Malcolm knew about the white Muslims long before he ever went to Mecca. Probably, yeah, that's true. Like they promote that a lot. That he met them near the end, close to his death. Like he had no knowledge of other cultures being Muslim. I think you're right. What you're saying, Derek. You're right. He probably knew a long time ago about these things. It's just they highlighted it after his visit. So you're right. They'll make a narrative that's like just to fit the story because they want to make it like the separation fully look good, like it was the nation angry that he's dissing, or what they call dissing, disrespecting the nation, how they, the culture of the nation, disrespecting them. saying that he doesn't believe in their beliefs anymore, and saying that what he discovered going to Hajj is a better way of being a Muslim. He was kind of, let's be straight up, it seemed like disrespect in a way, right? Correct me if I'm wrong. It seemed like disrespect because when he broke off, that's when everything started. The next year he died basically, or so. When he broke off, I think it's 64. They're saying that he was in scared for, not saying scared for his life, but he was getting threats. And one of the house where he was living in with his family blew up, right? Got bombed. So who bombed? Have they ever found the person or the people who bombed the house? See, all of this shit is like unsolved mystery. So that's an unsolved mystery. No one knows how Malcolm X's, the house where he was living, right, or resided at, was bombed. That's just shoved under the rug. No one's talking about how that was bombed, right? They didn't like that he was traveling around the world talking to all these leaders. America did not like that. 100%. And 65, they ended it, right? In 65, they ended it all. 65, they said a whole bunch of men, they came towards the stage, close to the stage. They got through all that security, right? Close to the stage and got him. That's what they're saying. 24 times or so. I can't even count. Over 24 shots in the chest. That's overkill. Come on. And to the back, like 24. What kind of gun did they have? Like, really, wasn't not strong enough? Like one bullet? 25 bullets to the chest and the back, a couple you got. Right? And they had time to unleash all this is what they're saying. They had time to unleash all those weapons, all those bullets into Malcolm, and no law enforcement came in after the individuals. It was the people in the hall who grabbed these individual suspects, what they claim, and were beating them, right? Was beating them until the police finally recognized to save them, right? That's what was going on, people. That's what was going on. That's the story what they're telling us. That's the story they're telling us. Yes. Yes. That's the story they're telling us. But this was a Black History episode, people. Malcolm X, um, great, great hero. I would say American hero. Malcolm X was a great American hero for his time and still is a hero to many now and a villain to some, and is probably the American government right now because the family wants answers. The family wants answers. Thank you for saying that the government did not like that because the Nation of Islam did not have enough money to travel to France and then they poisoned Malcolm up. So a lot of stuff, man. A lot of conspiracies, people. A lot of stuff going on. You're right. It's too much. There's a Bible of stuff. But hopefully the family gets justice. It's just around this time last year that they announced the lawsuit against the CIA, the FBI, right, and the NYPD. It's just recently. Just recently they put that out. A year is not a long time ago. They're hoping that it will go away, but it's not going to go away. A year is not a long time ago. Black History Month is here. So I'm reminding people that the family of, Hajj el-Shabazz, right, known as Malcolm X, it's not over. And stop talking about Epstein files. That's why he's probably doing all this shit, Mr. Trump and stuff, because this is still fresh. The family basically saying it's the government that has unalived Malcolm X. And if they done this to Malcolm X, how much other people have they done this to? He's a big example, right? American hero, American history. It's not fake. And people are fighting for their rights right now in America, right? So, people, please subscribe, like, comment, all that good stuff. This is the Down to Earth Network, the Down to Earth podcast with your host, Sean Myrie. I'm out.